Dr. Chattopadhyay, and many seniors. Forgive me if I don't take your names. Office bearers of Plant Protection Association of India, senior colleagues and friends. It is my privilege to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Sharma, President of the World Bioprotection Forum, a United Kingdom-based organization with a global mandate and adjunct professor at the Harry Butler Institute of Murdoch University, Perth, Western Australia. And Dr. Sharma has done his BSc from Delhi University, MSc and PhD in plant pathology from Indian Agricultural Research Institute. After his PhD, he joined ICRISAT, Hyderabad. During the last 40 years of his international career, he has served in various capacities and roles of board chair, board member, consultant, coordinator, director, leader, manager, mentor, policymaker, president, professor, regulator, scientist, science leader, trustee, and volunteer for a diversity of programs and organizations. Some significant positions that he has held include professor and chair in biosecurity and food security at Murdoch University, Australia director and chief plant health manager at the Department of Agriculture and Food, Government of Western Australia, founder co-director of Australia-China Center for Abiotic and Biotic Stress Management in Agriculture, Horticulture and Forestry. Excuse me. A joint center of the Murdoch University and the Northwest Agriculture and Forestry University, China. And most of you must be knowing that he was professor and head of the Division of Nematology at the Indian Agriculture Research Institute for about 2 years. And he had 15 years spent in as scientist at the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, Hyderabad. And since 2018, Dr. Sharma serves on a number of boards and committees and continues to consult, advise, and write about a variety of issues, mostly to do with biosecurity, food security, planetary health, and global governance. And I almost has been reading all his articles, and his passion for biosecurity, all of us know. And presently, he is president of the Western Australians Naturalist Club Incorporation, one of the oldest natural environment and biodiversity conservation organizations in Australia, and served as the chairman of the board of governors of the Helena River Steena School Community, Perth. And he has more than 200 publications, including 3 books. He is recipient of several awards and fellowships. To name a few, CGIR's Excellence in Science Award, and Dr. Sharma is fellow of the National Academy of Sciences, India. I have the privilege to watch him and learn from him during my PhD days in ICRISAT almost 20 years back. And he has graciously hosted us in 2015, Murdoch University, when plant quarantine officials of Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage and PPO, and then the representatives from DBT and Ministry of Environment. And thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and deliver the lecture. And now I request you to speak on plant biosecurity system needed for managing biological threat incursions. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Celia and Sarad Babu. It's indeed my pleasure to be here today. And you have provided me great opportunity to see some of my old colleagues, my friends for the last 40 years. And I was just before we started formally talking to Dr. Sarad Babu that we know more than 40 years from IRI days. And we have spent time together doing research, planning institutions, planning programs. And when I left for Australia about 22 years ago, I made a point that every year I would come to India, even for my personal visit, but meet all my friends. So COVID has somehow prevented that. So I have, during the last 2 years, missed no opportunity to speak whenever provided using Zoom, and so that I am able to be in touch with my old colleagues and friends. So I greatly appreciate this opportunity. And biosecurity is one area which I have been talking to and coming to India from since 2001 in India, and continue to emphasize the importance and role for biosecurity in India. So this is yet another opportunity to share my thoughts and system. Let me see if I'm able to share slides. Oh, sir. Can you enable this? It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Mine is okay. Can I share? Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Sir, now you are good to go.
Yeah, you can see me now.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. The title in itself has two topics: planned biosecurity system and managing biological threat incursions. And I have deliberately chosen this as primarily to indicate the importance of having a good planned biosecurity systems that is needed if we want to manage successfully incursions of biological threats. And the reason I have put planned biosecurity there, not biosecurity, is because my talk will be more focused on agriculture, food and agriculture, environment. It will not be focused on human biosecurity or more so animal biosecurity. So the focus will be more on planned biosecurity, but I will be speaking more broadly. And before I do that, let me give you the brief outline of my presentation, introduction, which I'm currently doing. I would like to also broadly cover what is biosecurity, the definition of biosecurity, scope, importance. Biosecurity is a buzzword right now. If you define biosecurity on internet, you'll get more than several thousand links defining biosecurity. But I will share with you a simple definition of biosecurity, scope and importance. Then biological threat. What's a biological threat? Is this something new, or we do it and we know it from with different name or terminology? What's the scope, importance, why we are talking about biological threat right now, much more, and a biosecurity system. If I'm saying that we need a biosecurity system to manage pest incursions, what a biosecurity system looks like? What's the need of a biosecurity system? What do we expect from a biosecurity system? How do we govern a biosecurity system? What are the approaches, strategies, partnerships, arrangement, science, all these? And what I've done, since I was talking to some of you, is primarily taken Australia as an example for biosecurity system. So I'll be talking about the biosecurity system that we predominantly have in Australia, but also in general terms. Then a system, then biological threat incursion management. Currently, in the era of globalization, biological threat incursions are more common than perhaps they were, say, 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 100 years ago. So how do we respond to them? How do we ensure that we are successful in managing the incursion and preventing them from causing very significant losses to our economy? Then I will also make some recommendations about biosecurity system and incursion management in India. I will not speak about the system as such, but I will be making some recommendations regarding the biosecurity system and incursion management in India, and some concluding remarks. This is a broad, generic outline of my presentation. May not happen in the same sequence, but I would cover these, intend to cover these aspects. Before I do that, I thought I'll also share with you where I am right now. This is Perth. I'm in Western Australia here. Perth is here. So Western Australia is 1/3 of Australia. Its area is almost similar to area of India. It's a beautiful place, Perth, and it is known for very fast-paced pitches, cricket pitch, and then for anything else, but it is a mining site and also known for agriculture. It is best known for also biosecurity. It has a very strong biosecurity system, to the extent that despite so much of COVID around in the world and in other parts of Australia, we still do not have COVID in Western Australia. if at all there is, and there, because we are lucky, at the same time, we have a good biosecurity system. Western Australia I like here because it is the closest to India. And if I touch water, this is the Swan River. And if you go, sorry. It has its own mind. Okay. If you see that this is Indian Ocean, if I touch Indian Ocean, the same water touches Tamil Nadu. So it's about 7,000 kilometers away. We are sitting and talking. And before, as I said, that we have a strong biosecurity system. Let me say, what is biosecurity? What do we mean by biosecurity? As I said, that there are so many definitions of biosecurity. The one is concept. I have, for a long time, used one definition, and that is biosecurity is safeguarding resources from biological threats. All the words there have some meaning. Safeguarding is we protect. Resources is anything we attach value. It could be your plant, it could be animal, it is human, it could be our food system. So anything that we attach value as human beings is a resource. From threats. Threats is anything which can cause us harm is a threat. If that threat is of biological nature, it becomes a biosecurity issue. So safeguarding, protecting our resources, such as food and agriculture, such as our native biodiversity, such as our human health, such as animal health, or anything else, such as our trade, market access from biological threats is biosecurity. So it's a one-line definition of biosecurity that I find more useful to understand what we really mean. You could extend it to include that it is a system, it is a concept which includes pre-border, border, but at the same time, this one-liner will do. So then comes the next one is, and I mentioned biological threats. So what do we mean by biological threats? So biological threats are potentially harmful organisms. We call them different names. We call them as pests, we call them as pathogens, we call them as disease, we call them as weed. So any organism that has the potential to cause us harm, that's a biological threat. That threat could be naturally occurring, that could be endemic, that may be introduced by accident. That is, we were careful, but still it got introduced, or by negligence, or deliberately introduced. We said we don't care about the system, we will introduce it, or deliberately introduced to cause harm to wider humanity. So all these are covered under biosecurity. So it is the entire spectrum of biological harmful organisms, potentially harmful organisms. Any organism that can be used to cause us harm is covered under biosecurity. Now, how important is biosecurity? If you look at the paper, which is about 20 years old, it indicates that exotic biological threats, those threats that are not endemic, when these exotic ones alone, they cause over $1.4 trillion losses worldwide. Losses in India indicated in this paper are over $91 billion US dollars. So it's a huge impact these exotic biological threats are causing. And despite use of all control mechanisms, the impacts are not lessening. So the importance of biological threats is so high that biosecurity of the global system is become the urgent need for humanity. Then comes, how do we have a biosecurity? It is to develop a good biosecurity system. Biosecurity system is, why do we need a biosecurity system? We want to protect our resources from biological threats. We want to preserve our biodiversity, productivity. We want to maintain and enhance our market access and trade. These are some of the examples. We need this system to safeguard all our resources, all our activities, so that we are not adversely impacted by biological threats. We are not adversely affected by harmful organisms. So that's the need that we have, and why we are so, to the extent, become a bit paranoid is because the invasion of the incursions of biological threats, if you look at the frequency and occurrence, it becomes so frequent that unless we have some mechanisms in place, nations are likely to be impacted adversely in terms of economy, in terms of ecology, in terms of their lifestyle. For example, Corona is also an example. COVID-19 is an example of the global biosecurity system was, in my opinion, was deficient in ensuring that COVID could be curtailed or contained where it was initially found. So, but if you can imagine a similar COVID-like organism impacting our plant systems, we don't want to be in that situation. So the need for a biosecurity system is growing and becoming acute. So what do we expect? That we have a biosecurity system. What will it do? We would expect that it will minimize the likelihood of any biological threats coming into the country. If they come in, we have a system in place. We don't allow them to establish. Even if they establish, we don't allow, the system does not prevents it spread. And even if it is present there, we have system in place, we will eradicate it. We are not able to eradicate it, we will contain it. If at all we are not able to contain it, we will ensure that the impact caused is minimal on the economy, community, and the environment. So then when I come to say, so what does it mean in terms of biosecurity system in action? I just want to confirm, are you able to see my full screen? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, okay, because I'm not sure whether you're able to see my full screen. So this is a system I have put in place. For example, what happens in Australia when you say the biosecurity system is in action? There's several million mail items that are checked every year. Talking about some of our audience members, if you have visited Australia, you would have seen the checks at the borders, at the airports, at the seaports. They're very, very stringent checks. Cargo containers coming in, if they are sending a material to Australia, it goes through a very stringent biosecurity check. Everything. So this is the system we are talking about, where we are, in addition to doing all these checks and all, we ensure that all the obligations we have internationally to ensure that the biosecurity system is compatible and consistent with the international requirement. We implement policies, procedures, regulations, and also have a plan in place that just in case a pest or disease or a threat shows up, we will have emergency situation plan implemented so that the impact caused is minimal. Now we see that what's the value the biosecurity system has. Let's look at Australia. Australia is a country where our food and agriculture is primarily for export purposes. The population in the country is so small that the food produced or other agricultural products, they're more meant for external markets. And they are able to do that because there are many pests and diseases that are not present in Australia. If at all they are present, there are systems in place, they are contained. And as a result, there's $51 billion of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Their exports are maintained and enhanced. That's because there's a very strong biosecurity system. So this is one of the reasons as to why this is flourishing. Tourism sector. Australia has a wide population of plant and animals, which is endemic. Australia in itself is unique as a country or a continent, you could say. And this tourism is primarily to ensure that the endemic plants and animals, they remain free from pests and diseases or threats that can be caused to them if those threats are able to enter the country. And that tourism sector is 50 billion. Then environmental assets, our forest, our biodiversity here, the conservative cost is there $5.7 trillion. And all these, there are about 1.6 million jobs that are sustainable because we have a strong biosecurity system. But then is this a system that is once you create it and it remains in place and that's done and dusted? No. Biosecurity system is as dynamic as the biosecurity threats are. They keep coming, they keep changing. So the need for a biosecurity system on tenterhooks all the time is required. For example, if you look at Australia, in last 20, 25 years, there have been a number of reviews. In 1996, the main review said that, look, we have been so far focusing our all attention on the border, that if our border is checked, we have a strong system. They said, no, it's not working. So we will have a continuum approach. We will have to put in some efforts pre-border, but also regardless of what we do, some pests or diseases, some threats will come in. So we will have to have a very strong post-border biosecurity. So that was how it changed. Then was again, after certain years, another review which said, no, we have to have an organization where the clarity of command and chain and actions taken. So lack of clarity means we are not able to take action as swiftly as we would like to take. So there was a regulatory reform. So there was again a reform that, look, we are as strong as our act is. So there was a Quarantine Act 1908 that was replaced by Biosecurity Act. The Biosecurity Act is a holistic act. It is across all the sectors. It is one act. It is not that something different for animals or plants or environment. It is one Biosecurity Act. And then there is an independent review of biosecurity system, where the review system is primarily to ensure. They said, look, we are very strong, but our focus is more on agriculture and food. So we need to have focus on our environment biosecurity, a similar system created for environment biosecurity. Then said that, look, biosecurity can work together, but there are two things with the states and territories and the national government. So we need to have better working arrangements so that there's a clarity of who is doing what. So there was intergovernmental agreement on biosecurity that was introduced. So this is an ongoing review systems that goes on. So and then what's the biosecurity system? How it is governed as, for example, a country like Australia? So there are two tiers. One is known as first tier, which is the national government, the federal government, and second tier is the state and territories. So the outside boundaries, if you look at, this is the national as for any country. This is the domain of the federal government. But the states and territories, for example, Western Australia, it has its own Biosecurity Act. It has its own biosecurity team. It has its own biosecurity policy system. Each state has. But what is ensured is that all these policies, all these situation, procedures, strategies, they are consistent with our national system and strategies. So that means you can say that the national tier and second tier, they work in unison. They work as a team. If there is any inconsistency, then federal government system prevails. But there are systems, especially for Biosecurity Act. But otherwise, there are system checks and balances in the system which allow that there are no such inconsistency. Let me give you some example of tier one. What does tier one does? Tier one is our national system. The agency which is responsible currently is Department of Agriculture, Water, and the Environment. The name keeps changing, so it is at present. But this is the National Plant Protection Organization. I think this will be something similar to the ICAR or Ministry of Agriculture in India. That will be National Plant Protection Organization. So its primary role is the face of the biosecurity for the external world. So anything, this is the gateway to enter Australia regarding any biosecurity issue. So any phytosanitary certificates, risk assessment, if there is any emergency situation, what are the trade implications, quarantine borders, and also this national tier one system. They represent all the national biosecurity committees, perhaps lead them, and also Office of the Plant Protection Officer. Office of the Chief Plant Protection Officer is something like, I would say, a role which is slightly higher in terms of responsibility would be of the Plant Protection Advisor in India. So this is the officer would be responsible for incursion management, responsible for looking at policy structures, and ensuring that the national and state territories, they're working together when there is an incursion, they're working together when there is a market access and trade issues. So that's the role of the first tier. When we come to the second tier, then we see that state biosecurity programs, they replicate the national biosecurity system. So for example, there is a chief plant protection officer. There will be a similar position at each and every state or territory. So, and their focus is working on endemic and established pests. Let me make, as you know, but let me make it clear. Endemic pests are primarily pests that are found, their origin there in the country. And established pests are those, they're exotic per se, but they have established and we have agreed that we cannot eradicate them. So the second tier, the biosecurity system, they are primarily ensuring that interstate trade is occurring. In Australia, there is a very significant difference in the pest and disease scenario. There are certain pests and diseases that are present in some states, but not in other. For example, in Western Australia, there is a pest called Queensland fruit fly, which is not present, which is endemic in Queensland. So we have similar restrictions on any fruit or vegetable coming from Queensland as from other countries. So very significant. And we ensure that there is no disparity between our interstate restrictions and our national and international restrictions. So, but at the same time, as you would think that all the geographical area is under state and territories. So all actions happen under the state and territory quarantine biosecurity system. And in case of any incursion, the incursion of a biological threat is somewhere in any state or territory. So the leadership role primarily comes from the state and territory, but it is coordinated nationally. And I'll come to that in terms of how it happens. In addition to government, so far I was speaking about biosecurity system, where governments are primarily working together, state governments and the national government. But Australian example, the reviews have indicated that biosecurity is not only a government business. Government alone cannot do it very well. So it is important that all the key stakeholders are part of decision-making and action and also resource sharing. So Australia created another independent company, one for plant, one for animal, known as Plant Health Australia and Animal Health Australia. So, for example, Plant Health Australia, it's a company which has members, and members contribute. The members are Australian government, that's the federal government, and the state and territory governments, and the peak farmers body. For example, here we have grains industry, we have horticulture industry, different industries that are part of this. I would think in terms of India, something like National Sheet Corporation, IFCO, or if there is any grain for example, group, they will be part of this company. So what do? So any decisions government take, they are shared and informed. And any concerns that these farmers groups or others, those who would be impacted by government action, they are discussed, and the decision is taken after taking in view all the views from different key stakeholders. So, and since I have very actively engaged with some of these, and I find this is one of the good contributions Australian review system had, where we included, in addition to the governments, farmer bodies, and all those bodies that are impacted, for example, some trade market access and trade organizations, those who are engaged in food and agriculture sector. In addition to that, then we have all the system in place. Then we realized, okay, what is our approach? How do we do biosecurity? Said, we started with border biosecurity initially, where the primary focus was that. Then we also understood that regardless of what we do, our borders, country borders, nation borders are very porous. Biological threats would creep in regardless. But there are biological threats. So whatever you do, you cannot stop them at the border. They have their own tacit ways of entering a country. So best thing for them is to manage them pre-border. So pre-border is to have a system of analysis that these are the pests or diseases, these are the organisms we cannot check at the border. We will not be able to be effectively manage them at the border. So we ensure that the producer, any risk carrier is checked pre-border or not allowed to come in. So pre-border requires not only risk analysis and policies, it is global intelligence, intelligence regarding passengers, intelligence regarding material coming into the country, and clarity, how we are exposed as a nation, and then clarity, what actions are required to ensure that such threats are managed pre-border. And then, of course, border biosecurity system, primarily known as quarantine, is much better known, where we have checks, physical checks of all the potential carriers coming into the country, and the implementation of regulatory control. A very powerful and organization we have, border biosecurity. But then also the recognition that pests have their insidious ways of entering, biological threats, they have insidious ways of entering. So we will have to ensure that we are always on the alert. So we keep on checking a post-border, the potential areas where these biological threats could show up. That is where we came up with surveillance systems, strategies to be implemented, diagnostic strategies to be implemented. And if they show up, we have system in place that we take immediate action and to ensure that majority of those that are able to enter are eradicated. So this became the entire system of biosecurity. So looking at, then we have several biosecurity system is full of strategies implemented at national state level, and also at the crop area level, and also individual field levels. Now, when I talk about surveillance strategy, we will have a national biosecurity surveillance, planned biosecurity surveillance strategy. So what we talk about is, do we have resources to take overall surveillance of the entire country? Perhaps not. So how do we ensure that we have effective surveillance system in place? You say, okay, let us identify the most, the pests or diseases or the biological threats that if they enter the country, we will be significantly impacted. So do we have a list of those parts? So we prepare such lists. Then we say that what are the areas that how and when they are able to, they are potential to show up. So we develop our surveillance system. So, and they say that, do we have the necessary competence to undertake those surveillance, or do we have the people to undertake those surveillance? If not, do we need to then more develop automation or develop now digital tools and other tools to undertake our surveillance? Same thing for diagnostics. Diagnostics, we say that, look, the first thing when we find something suspect, we need to then take action. But these are the threats which are not in the country, so we're not very familiar. So we don't have experts in this area. For example, let's say canal bunt shows up in Australia. So we may not have expert to identify canal bunt and say this is canal bunt or take action. The action may require millions of dollars. So the diagnostics become very important. So we have a strategy as to how any pest or disease that is exotic, it shows up, that who are the people who are identified as experts. So we have a register of experts for a given pest or disease or biological threats. And then we say that which is the methodology for saying that this methodology will be used, whether it's PCR, whether we use under the microscope traditional one, or combination, or a serological method. These are the most effective, and on the basis of that, we will confirm that we have a pest or disease incursion confirmed. Then we say, no, we will not do it one, we will search it for 2 labs. When 2 labs, they have a similar result, then we say, okay, yes. So these type of strategies we have for almost all decision-making points. Similarly, risk analysis. Do we do quantitative risk analysis? Do we do qualitative risk analysis? Do we do semi-quantitative risk analysis? And why? Which gives us better level of confidence. So we market access, we maintain market access. We do always import risk analysis. Should we do export risk analysis? What are the potential risks to our exports? So all these strategies we under the biosecurity systems. So we have institutions and groups working on these areas. But then they are also supported by state strategies that how do we do certification, how we do accredit different schemes to ensure that growers, farmers are able to take some actions and say that, look, we believe that our seed produced is free from any pest and disease that you have seen, that you've seen that we should be free. Then we have a system in place. How do we monitor? How do we ensure compliance? So all these areas, we have a system in place. Emergency response capability. We have identified that every state would have training in emergency response, and the training for not only the ground level, sometime to the director general level, they would have an emergency response training. It may be only online, a few hours training, but clarity, the emergency response capability and success very much depend on the swift decision making, and that only comes when you have clarity about roles and role and responsibility. Then comes the state, individual crop. We have a plan for example, wheat. What are the pests and diseases? What are the threats that can show up? And then if it shows up, what is the action that can be taken by the grower? What is the action that can be taken by the consultant or the experts, the extension workers? Then, for example, we have also a system in place that every field, because we have very large areas, we have 10,000 hectare or big fields and such areas where we have farm biosecurity in place that you can't enter. Sorry? Is it something you said?
No, sir, you continue, sir. Raja Reddy, sir, please mute.
Okay. So when you look at your biosecurity system strategies, there are primarily 2 types. They have prevention and preparedness. They are strategies which prevent. They are targeted to prevent the introduction of biological threats. And there are biosecurity strategies. They are targeted to ensure we're prepared in case there's biological threats that show up. So we have a, so to say, umbrella approach to our biosecurity system. There is one more aspect to our biosecurity here, and which is important, and I would say required is the science-based system. Biosecurity is, for example, is one of the areas where science-based biosecurity has a role in policymaking. In strategy making here, biologists significantly contribute to policy making, which I always thought that it is a domain of social scientists or economists and others. But no, in biosecurity, whether a pest or disease, whether an organism will survive at 10 degrees or whether it will be surviving in this moisture condition, contribute to policy making, whether or not we will have import policy or export policy for this one. But then we have a very strong investment in biosecurity science, which is primarily via research and innovation. We had a cooperative research center for plant biosecurity, where we had for about 10 years, millions of dollars, more than $100 million invested for developing different products, research products that will contribute to better diagnostics, surveillance tools, risk mitigation treatments, for example, post-harvest treatments. If our fumigations are not working, what options do we have? Incident management. Can we have some better system of incident management? Can we use automation? Can we use smart technologies? Similarly for risk analysis. So biosecurity system is very much underpinned by strong science. And I think this should be something which all nations must consider. So when you look at the functional arrangements, very simple. On top is a ministers forum, ultimately the decision maker. You have agriculture senior officials committee. It will be something like secretary agriculture in federal, or secretary agriculture in the state departments. Then we have a national biosecurity committee. It will be something like deputy secretaries or deputy director general, like from the federal and state, they will be member. Sectoral committees, animal health, plant, something like director biosecurity, director agricultures, they are members. The domestic quarantine market access will be something like your Directorate of Plant Protection Quarantine, where they look at the domestic quarantine, also interstate requirements. Then there is new creation, Plant Health Australia, Animal Health Australia, which is we have engagement of other stakeholders other than government ones. I'm not sure we have such systems in other countries or even in India. Then consultative committees, I'll come about consultative committees. They are formed primarily for incursion management. So this is primarily this biosecurity system is there, which is fundamentally required to respond to biological threat incursions. Let me then talk about biological threat incursions and how do we, in this era of globalization, incursions, and I'm sure you know better than I do, are more frequent than we would like them to be. And in Australia, we spend a lot of time on incursion management. Then said that, look, to make it more effective, to ensure that we have a high level of success in incursion management, the success is that we are able to eradicate most of the incursions, or if not eradicate them, and contain them. If not able to contain them, we ensure that the impact caused, adverse impact, is minimal. So what happened is that I said that we created an emergency plant-based response deed. This is a legal entity. This is something which it went through a long process of stakeholder consultation, and somewhere in early 2000, we developed this document, and I would say that I had a very significant contribution as lead from Western Australia to such documents. But these documents have helped. They provide clarity regarding what actions to be taken if there is an incursion. How do we define an incursion exotic pest? We call them emergency plant pest. So we have defined them. If there is an incursion that meets the definition of this emergency plant pest, we will be able to apply this deed. And that deed provides all the information and guidelines that how do we go ahead? Should we start the process of incursion management? How do we fund it? Who will take action? When do we stop? So, and there is one important thing which I would like to talk about. There is that the deed is a more or like provides you regulatory information and also policy and also coordination. But there is also another document we have produced nationally, which is plant plan. This is the technical response. It says that how many committees, how many consultative groups, what you need to do, what are the definitions, what qualifications you need to have. So what are the key roles and responsibility for incursion management? So it provides, and I will strongly recommend you that you go through this link. It would help you in understanding incursion management in Australia. As I was talking about, biological threat categorization is extremely important, and I'll share some information. What does it mean? Threat categorization is that every pest, number one, what we have done is what are the key plants, crops in Australia? What are the key biological threats? We don't want them to be here. So we have a list. We identified, let's have top 100 such pests and diseases. And we said that, okay, so these are the pests and diseases. These are the biological threats that we want that if they show up, we will take action. Then we said that how do we take action? Who is going to fund those incursion managements? It could last for several months, years. Said that, look, we need to identify the impact of these pests, whether there's much broader on public good or private good. Public good is primarily the impact is on environment or natural or any amenity which is in community interest, or it's more on jobs. So such type of impacts are public good that will be funded by government. If there is a primarily business impact, that will be funded by the farmers' body and those businesses that are impacted. So we identified 4 categories. 4 categories is category 1, where the impact is primarily public, on public good, environment, or on jobs, or on such areas. Or there are pests where the impact is more on environment or community, and there is some impact on the businesses or industry or farming groups or private groups. And then the more impact is, that is 80% impact is, then we defined it roughly 80-20. 85% impact is public, 20% is private. Then another one is 50% public, 50% private. Then 20% public and 75%, 80% private. So accordingly, then funding is given. The funding is 100% government. That means 100% is funded by government. Then what happens when it is 100% government funded? Then 50% of the government fund comes from federal government. The 50% is divided by other government agencies depending on the area of the affected crop. If, for example, if there is an incursion of pest which is for, or threat which is for wheat, then and then we make an assessment that it is going to cause $1 million. And we think that it is a category 1 pest, for example, let's say. It is not a wheat pest, it's a pest of an environment. And then say, let's say it is some forest. And then that forest area is more in Andhra Pradesh. Say 30% area is in Andhra Pradesh. So Andhra Pradesh government, then what will happen? 50% the funding will come from government, national government, and 50% will come from state government. Of the 50%, 30% will come the Andhra Pradesh state. Not to confuse you further, this is primarily to say that there is a funding arrangement which is already in place before any incursion happens. It is our experience that if we start thinking whether we should eradicate or not eradicate, who will fund not or not should, who will fund and not fund it, who will not fund it. Those things are, when there is an incursion, they delay the incursion process and the pest gets established. And for incursion management, the first thing and the foremost thing is swift action. Immediate action is to be taken, early action is to be taken, decision making has to be very swift and clear. So then we said that decision making is so important, then we need to have clarity who will take those decisions. So we have a categorization group. As I was talking about categorization, this group has primarily the experts. If there is a incursion of a disease of a fungus, then we will have plant pathologists from the national government and also from the state government agencies, and economists and plant pathologists if there are with the farming groups. They're together, and there is a system in place to follow that criteria and then to categorize a pest if the pest is not already categorized. Then that categorization group, they say that this pest comes to category 2. So that recommendation is given to Consultative Committee on Emergency Plant Pests. And this committee is primarily the directors of biosecurity in all states and also the chief plant health manager nationally. So they make an assessment and if they agree with this one and primarily they seek their also independent advice, then develop a response plan. That they look, we have this incursion, and this incursion can be managed, and we believe it is eradicable, and this is how it should be funded. Then it goes to National Management Group, primarily secretaries of agriculture, and then they agree or don't agree. So they endorse, and the incursion management action starts. So this is the process that we have in place, and I'll give you now. And I can tell you, I have been on several incursion management this thing. It's like warlike situation. So let's say that something, there's incursion management, there's a circumstance that there is a state like, say, Andhra. Look, I've spent more time in Andhra, I said, let me say Andhra. So there is incursion in Andhra. And so all of a sudden, the incursion management team will be established in Andhra Pradesh by the director of biosecurity or something like whosoever in the similar capacity. So they will be immediately, what is required for incursion management? Immediately we want to know where is the pest, how far it has spread, when it came from where did it come? So what are the potential areas it has been found? So what is needed? We need to have people going to those areas. So we need cars to go there. So what is to be done there? We need lenses there. So there's areas are far off. So we need to have an arrangement for their overnight stays. How many days are going to be there? So we accordingly have this planning manager or operation manager. It's like war-like situation. Communications manager, industrial liaison. So immediately, the moment there is an incursion, media groups are after you. So there is an industrial liaison, communication manager, who's going to say what not to be said, all those things. So there may be some people, though, maybe injury. There may be some areas where pests maybe there is an incursion of honeybees. So there are issues of health and safety. So all these things are covered, but all these plans are made in advance. It's a matter of simply implementation. And this is one area I've given here, that how it works. So for example, a pest is reported. Immediately in a given state, immediately the director of biosecurity in that state would say that we would cordon off that area. We will have those restrictions imposed. People will not be able to go till we are taking action, or things will not move which can further spread this one. And under the act, the director planned biosecurity, for example, I had this, within 24 hours, you have to implement action. That's a requirement. That action is to inform all other states, inform nationally, inform the farmers groups, and ensure that you have commenced action to confirm the identity, and you have established a small committee to take action. So then immediately the expert committees, the scientists, the experts would make an assessment that, look, the diagnostics is correct. And then the consultative committee will say the eradication can be achieved. Then they'll say that a response plan will be prepared and it will be sent to National Management Committee. They say that, look, we agree, go ahead. And then the action commences. They said, look, we believe that eradication cannot be achieved, stop it there. So this is how the action happens in Australia, and I would assume that would happen in most places where there's a strong biosecurity system in place. Now, when we look at a biosecurity system in Australia, I would say that the system is holistic. It has a continuum approach, which is pre-border, border, and post-border, and it is a system where strong science underpins biosecurity, whether it's planning, plan, legislation, regulation, entire biosecurity system. And it is not only government, it's everybody's business. If you go to airport and hire a cab, and you talk about, you won't be surprised that the taxi driver talking to you about biosecurity issues, or we have restriction, we believe there should be restriction, government should do such things. So it's everybody's business. Community is very much engaged. That's a culture created. And there's a system created that if there is any incursion, and there's a quick response capability to incursion. So the system is very strong, and despite that, there are incursions. But I believe that there is always scope for improvement. But it's a dynamic system, and we keep on changing. But when you look at globally, there are pre-COVID time, there are billions of people. They are moving by air, and once it normalizes, it will still happen. There are millions of containers moving around. And as you would know, there are papers that some scientists, they collected dirt from these containers that come from different countries. And they found live organisms in those ones. So it's a number game. There are so many such containers, like potential carriers of biological threats coming in. And then the likelihood of establishment becomes much higher. And the technology is such that previously anything other than air travel, even air travel used to take a long time, but within 24 hours, you're from one part of the world to the next one. So as a result, our natural system for pest or disease dispersal is now compromised, and now they're traveling more often with us, and as a result, our food systems are highly exposed and they need protection. And this is what, when I started working on biosecurity in 2000 and 2001, then I realized that Australian focus, New Zealand, other countries that primarily talk about biosecurity for market access and trade. My background from working in India and with ICRSAT, working internationally in the developing countries where food security is paramount issue. I realized that biosecurity is integral to food security. And a majority of the countries where food security is an issue, biosecurity has not been given that as much attention as it deserves. And that is where, from that time, from wherever I had opportunity, whether in India and other countries, I have emphasized the importance of having a strong biosecurity system to ensure that the food security system or agricultural production systems are not impacted adversely. And this is something, for example, we have done a long time. And I recall, and Dr. Varaprasad would remember this paper. We in 2000, I think 8 or 9, we published this in the Indian Journal of Plant Protection. And that was a deliberate attempt to publish this in Indian Journal of Plant Protection, primarily because to ensure, to at least share this information with our plant protection scientists and the need for system for research or developing biosecurity system in India to ensure that our food security, our agricultural production, our food value chains are not adversely impacted. And this I've done for a long time. And whenever I've come to India, met ICR, met Ministry of Agriculture, our planning commission that time. And because most of the people were known, and Farmers Commission that time, I recall Dr. R.B. Singh talking to him. And he then also, it's my recollection, in 2009, also published a paper from the Farmers Commission on food security impacted by biosecurity. But at the same time, we have emphasized the role for biosecurity in achieving food security. And this is yet another paper in 2009. Biosecurity should be, I've been talking about food security and the need for biosecurity in India, need for a strong system. And there has been a slow incremental impact, and majority of people, as I said, are known. And I am fairly confident that many of those senior officers mentioned that the need for strong biosecurity has gone through Planning Commission, Niti Aayog, and other key institutions document, so that it is showing up. And there are many now experts in biosecurity in India, which is very, very heartening to know. And then also when I had an opportunity to talk about food security and write about food security in a book for Vision Infinity for Food Security, he said that there are 3 components, 3 mantras for food security that are required. And all those 3 mantras, they are influenced by lack of biosecurity. If we invest in resources for proper biosecurity risk management, that will be the best investment we would make, most cost-effective biosecurity to achieve food security goals in India or anywhere where food security insecurity is an issue. So this has been, and I'm somehow have this nagging feeling that with COVID and also with growing understanding of the importance of biosecurity, I have this feeling that biosecurity system will get a further boost in India. And somehow what happens is when biosecurity systems get a boost, they primarily are focused on human biosecurity, or at best go down to animal biosecurity. So I think your challenge would be to ensure that biosecurity system that gets developed in India has the entire biosecurity system that includes food and agriculture and environment and biodiversity. And so what I've done is that I have indicated some recommendations which India biosecurity system may like to consider. And I say that whenever I look at the Indian biosecurity system, I said there is a need for an overarching biosecurity strategy and framework. It is, to the best of my knowledge, still lacking. We need a single business plan. Doesn't matter whether it is human, animals, agriculture, plants, and we have to have one business plan for biosecurity. what strategies are very similar across the impacted organisms. We need to have a one Biosecurity Act, clarity on powers, responsibility, how to respond to biosecurity risks. To the best of my knowledge, we do not have at this stage. We need to have one lead agency for all biosecurity operations, whether it is for human biosecurity. So operations are similar. We can divide them under groups, but we need to have a one frame. There used to be IQUIS with under different names. Similarly, we need to have a quarantine biosecurity organization, national, something like Indian Biosecurity Operations Organization, where all inspections, all implementations of processes are done through one lead agency. Then diagnostics and surveillance strategy. In fact, there should be two national strategies. Diagnostics, who are the key experts in diagnostics of potential biosecurity threats that are not present in India? If they show up, who is going to make those assessments? Who will we consider as expert, and their knowledge we will depend our decision. What are the methods and materials we will use, whether it's by chemical identification, it's a traditional identification or nuclear method, any other method with clarity, surveillance strategy, how we will ensure that we have covered the entire country. And if there is a pest or disease, if a threat it shows up, we will be able to implement action immediately. And we have contingency plans already prepared. Biosecurity is something which we have to do during peacetime. If we act when something has shown up, it's too late. And I would also strongly think that India may like to consider a center for plant and livestock biosecurity, focused on policy and biosecurity science and research and innovation that underpins the entire biosecurity system. And I think what I believe is that biosecurity system would get a boost if we introduced biosecurity curriculum research at the university level, at our postgraduate level, which I think majority of the countries still do not have. So India may like to take a lead in this area and introduce curricula research and for postgraduate and doctoral level in India. If I have to give some concluding remarks, I would say that it is obvious that biological threat risk is increasing. Every nation needs a strong, robust biosecurity system to safeguard its resources. If we don't, the impacts are serious and unaffordable. And the impact on economic, social, and environmental consequences are so high and grave that the investment on biosecurity system would appear to be minuscule in terms of potential consequences. And I think the recommendations made here is primarily help India in upgrading its biosecurity system. It will help India in ensuring that it is able to safeguard its resources from biological threat incursions and their adverse impacts now and in the future. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much. If you want to contact me, my contact details are given here, and you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much once again.
Dr. Shashi Sharma, thank you very much. And it is really a wonderful, everybody was glued to the, their devices, and there was complete, some of them were not muted also, but there was no pin drop silence everywhere. Though we have 50 people logged onto the Zoom, but all 50 were quite listeners. And it is, I am very happy that your presentation has taken, and the recommendations and conclusions are really they're really worth taking note. And Government of India, I on behalf of Plant Protection Association of India, I think we have one ADG from ICR, Dr. Dubey, is with us. I think I will certainly take an initiative to writing to ICR and taking up some we know that Biodiversity Act was introduced way back I think long back before 2014 I think, and that was 2011 I think it was introduced, and for reasons, known to some of the, decision makers. It has again not seen the light of the day. I think the Biodiversity Act needs to be reintroduced again, maybe debated among the stakeholders. And look, after hearing your, I know that a lot happened in Europe and especially in Australia, and the protocols have been really not just taken care, really taken. Yeah, when you said that it is, when an incursion happens, it's like the response is like war. It's taken as a warlike situation, and the response is very quick. And something has to happen. It has to happen in 24 hours. And I know people are now more aware of the consequences of the incursions, especially if you look at what has happened in India with pandemic, human tragedy. We lost, though the figures on paper are 4 to 5 lakhs, but we know we have read articles not just from India, from abroad also. There are 40 to 4 to 5 million people, died in the country. And it is not just the newspaper reports. It is actually, there is no tally between the number of death certificate issued all over the country and the figures quoted by the governments. Various. I don't want to name any particular state, but it happened across the country. So now I think people understand more about the consequences of any incursion. It happened in our country with in the context of a virus, a deadly virus, taking away the lives of many people. And this is because it is a human tragedy. We understand what is happening to something that comes into the country. But we must be losing a lot of our resources with respect to plant biodiversity, as well as food. It is a threat to food security and biodiversity. So these are all certain. I don't want to take a lot of time. I think there must be some good number of people, trying to, ask you questions. What I understand is that we need on a very significant note, a Biodiversity Act is the order is very much required now. And as you rightly said, that diagnostics and all that biosecurity risk management has to happen. And one more important point you said is curriculum at PG and doctorate level needs to be introduced in the universities and ICR institutions also. And these are some wonderful recommendations that you have given, Dr. Sharma. I think I'm going to talk to many of my colleagues in plant production, and in fact, this talk is going to be on available on YouTube. I was just sitting on YouTube also and listening, in the next room. It is very much going to be available. It is very much available right away. And I now move on to Dr. Celia, and Celia to know the next part. I think if there are, if Varaprasad or someone wants to, I don't know. Let me ask Dr. Celia to move on further. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. Thank you, sir, Dr. Sharma, for a very lucid and comprehensive presentation. Now the topic is open for discussion. If you raise your electronic hand, I can. And Dr. Dubey, please.
Thank you, Dr. Celia. First of all, I'd like to thanks Dr. Sharma, very wide coverage, whatever the biosecurity procedures and status being adopted in Australia and what the needed in India. And I would like to assure here, when 2014 biosecurity bill is pending the cabinet and several round meeting has been made, and let us hope within a few years a concrete solution for this integrated approach will come in India also. I would like to, 2-3 query I would like to know. This e-phyto nowadays is coming, and a lot of Indian, Australian companies, industry, those who are associated in production of the seed, import and export, and even the quarantine regulation, they want a regional level e-phyto that has to be valid applicable at regional level. Suppose in Australia is using north eastern part of the country has to be applicable, that one. So what is the scope of this E5 at regional level E5 status in Australia? Second one is the pre-border quarantine you have mentioned. That is based basically, while looking your slide, it appears that that is based on the risk analysis and policies. Do you have any certification program for the exporting country in the pre-border quarantine procedures where the planting material or anything is being produced? And third was the owner reimbursement cost. This is based on the whatever the produce is there and how much time takes to the reimburse to the owners, because this is much more important. This is another very drawback in our conditions. We are not able to, if total eradication program we are implementing anywhere, how much reimbursement and who will give and how much time it will take to reimburse to the farmer, that is another problems. What is the situation in Australia? These three query I would like to know from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dubey. Very important and pertinent questions. I think I'd like to also make it clear that I speak here as a president for World Bioprotection. So I'm not from Australian government. So if there is anything which is required, so don't take any my suggestion as a government perspective. So it will be somebody who has been with biosecurity a long time is sharing his viewpoint. So I'll start the owner reimbursement. The last question, which I remember quickly first, is the owner reimbursement was something which was found to be a stumbling block in Australia also. People will not report a given incursion because if there is incursion is reported, government agency may come and destroy the crop and destroy business even. And so what is the merit in doing it? You would say that this is it, and in the interest of entire country that you have done it, because the pest is eradicated by doing this one. But on an individual level, that person, a farmer, has lost his or her livelihood or the crop for the sea. So owner reimbursement is swift. As I said, that recommended that reading that document, the clarity, the given time frame, owner reimbursement must be made. So it is under the deed. So it is legalized. So it is not that you can afford not to pay. And for example, because I am not able to recall there has been any complaint that it has not been done on time, because system is such. But my emphasis is primarily to build this system during peacetime, except that incursions are going to happen, except that sometimes it will be very expensive. And at that time, if you're asking a politician, it could be election time. And I can say that this world is very similar across the countries. So how to ensure that decision-making is that is required to achieve eradication is to ensure that decision points are made well in advance. So for owner reimbursement cost, or what decision a director general will take, how advice will be provided to the minister, there are points made. And for example, under the plant plan, there are training programs required for all those who get engaged, regardless of your position hierarchy one. You will have to understand and then say that, look, you have, for example, incident management. It is not your status or in the rank in the system that gives you, for example, incident manager. If I am just a director and I am also incident manager at that time, or I'm a scientist, I'm incident manager because I have gone through that training, then I am not asking anybody. I am the decision maker. Sitting there, I'll make all decisions. Okay, 10 jeeps are going to this area and they're coming back tomorrow. Patrol grant is sanctioned. 3 people will devote time for this thing. I am not now waiting for the director general or anything, because this is under the power is given. So that clarity has to come, that in the incident management system, the clarity of rules and regulations has to be there during peacetime. It is only implemented when there is a regulation. So there is less thinking time, is more action time. So that is regarding owner reimbursement. I hope I did answer Dr. Dubey this part. So what was this? Sorry, I missed the second one. Are you talking about the pre-border one? Pre-border one, yes, there are actions. Let's say apples coming from say New Zealand to Australia. Let's say that we say that there are certain diseases which we don't want to be in Australia. And then we say that, look, we can't do if they show up at border. Then the country which is exporting could say that, look, we have the following systems in place where we ensure that the disease which you are worried about does not become a part of the chain. It does not get transmitted. Say, okay, you can come and investigate our system. And if it is to your satisfaction, if you're satisfied, then we go. But your satisfaction has to be science-based. Whatever you say, so that is where the science comes into, as to why Australia has invested so much in science, is to ensure that whatever decision we are making, we have a scientific basis to say that. So once we agreed, look, so then the pre-border inspection or system in place is sufficient to bring it. So that is a pre-border system in place. And that facilitates market access and trade. At the same time, it is not prohibitory. And sorry, the first one, Dr. You're saying that there is a
E5 at regional level, which has the applicability at regional level. Because most of the companies organization in Australia, they are pleading that there should be at international level, the C52 at regional level declaration has to be accepted in almost all the participating country in that particular region. So what is the status of
it perhaps will require more information, but my quick response would be, and whenever I have been dealing with the seed one, I become extremely careful with seed. Seed and plant, these are the ones, if they are harboring something which is latent, it shows up later. And then you have, it's gone to the production region directly. So to give any permission to enter regarding seed and plant, if I have biosecurity charge, I would be extremely careful and go very stringent initially to ensure, because in biosecurity, if you make a mistake, for example, if you allowed something and made a mistake, you cannot undo it. If you have made a mistake by restricting something, you can still undo it. So, for example, I still would need more information regarding answering your question. But as I said, that my approach will be starting with the very, very stringent and careful approach with any planting material which goes to production region.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. Are there any more questions? Dr. Chattopadhyay, would you like to say something?
Very good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Celia, Dr. Sharad Babu, and of course, Sharma ji. Was a wonderful lecture, thoroughly enjoying, and always updating and informative as usual of you. No specific thing, in fact, at this point of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Celia, look for if Dr. Varaprasad is there. I don't know.
Dr. Varaprasad is
very much
not there.
He's not there. I think he's on drive. I think that's the reason why he's not able to be there. Yeah. Any hands being lifted?
Umashankar U.S. Singh's hand is there.
Dr. U.S. Singh is
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. U.S. Singh.
Basically, I would like to, first of all, congratulate Shashi for excellent presentation. I want to basically comment something on what Dr. Dubey commented. Regional strategy at regional level and strategy at the country level. You know that Australia has some very unique advantages. What the small countries which share the borders, they don't have. Like border of India, Bangladesh, Nepal are so porous that it is practically impossible to stop anything moving from one country to other. You know that most popular rice variety of Bangladesh is never released in Bangladesh, it is Indian variety. So border is so porous, so somehow we have to be practical on that front. If you think that any disease has come, particularly in those crops which are important for both the countries, you can stop it by border, checking at border, that's practically impossible. And to some extent, even the COVID has shown the futility of some of these attempts also. So what I feel that the strategies at the regional level could be definitely more effective. And particularly in these cases where you share the borders, and for the small countries, borders are so porous that it's not practically to seal the borders and stop the movement of the seed or movement of the grains. Yeah.
I totally endorse that view, Umashankar. I think I had one more recommendation, but I thought there will be so many recommendations. India has a position where it is very much impacted, not directly the impacts of biosecurity threats are coming into the country, but also what is happening in the nearby countries, because there's a porous border. And so in addition to working on your national system of biosecurity, India must take lead in regional biosecurity. Indian biosecurity system will be as strong as the biosecurity system in other neighboring countries, or there is a system in place that there is some kind of insulation. If not, then we will have to have dependence on pre-border, much more dependence on pre-border, and that would be more in local and regional areas where you are able to find regions where if given pest or disease a potential concern is not present, and there are systems in place which ensure that they will not move from the point they are found.
Thank you, sir. CG Centers has one health initiative. I think most of us are aware about it. And since Dr. Rajan Sharma is here, would you like to give your inputs, Dr. Rajan?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Celia. So, in fact, as you are aware, I mean, although I was involved initially in that initiatives and all that, but still, that's still at initial stage. I mean, it's from the one CG where we are not actually a partner, but as like MEPs, we may contribute as partner actually, but not as one CG. But yeah, those initiative where learning from each other actually, and then you remember when they presented, so they shared the very first slide where they showcase the the collaboration what ICRISAT has with NVPJ, so as a sort of a platform where those information can be shared, and then the all those information obtained so far, and then how we are working together. So as a hub, actually, they just want to have it like that. I think yeah, that's good initiative. But even before that, actually, across CG, actually, we had that gene bank platform, actually, so where we had GHU as a community of practice, where all this germplasm health unit of CG. So we used to work together, and then at least one meeting in a year where we can share our the experiences and then learning and all that. So I found that very useful, actually, so where whenever that's in fact it's a wonderful approach, actually. And then that actually from where we can have that, as Dr. Sharma mentioned, those regional approaches and all that. So we're working together, learning from each other, and then sharing our resources and sharing our experience. That's very helpful, actually. So that's what the main point, but emerged out of that collaboration, and then as a community of practice was to have as a basic quality management system. So that's very important. So all different labs who are involved in germplasm, facilitating this smooth and safe germplasm exchange, they must have that minimum standard of quality management system in place. So, and then, I mean, it may not be ISO certification or that, but at least, I mean, learning from there, and then guided by all these TTs and then IPPC and all that, so that you have that minimum standard in place, and then whosoever have those experience, and then those who are actually accredited, maybe learning from their experiences. So what minimum level of quality management system that should be in place? I think that was a really very good lesson. And then our SOPs, so our standard operating procedures. So it's not only from the CG perspectives. So wherever, whenever we are working with our NPPOs, so if we have all those, the common SOPs, and then those commonalities, the common minimum quality management system in place, I think that that will be really helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan.
Raj. Celia, I'd like to respond to this one.
Yes,
I think Rajan made a good, and I really appreciated that, because though coming from CGIAR system, I have questioned and asked regarding what are the biosecurity systems in place by these international organizations, primarily where scientists are moving from one country to other country, one field to other field, and then allow farmers to come to their field. What are the biosecurity protocols? What are the policies? And to the extent I wrote to in 2010-9, some long time back, and then indeed I write same thing in my book, Vision Infinity for Food Security, that international organizations need to be extremely cautious to ensure that the outstanding work they are doing is not compromised because they are seen to be disseminating pests and diseases. So they need to have a very biosecurity system which is implemented and respected while taking that global work. So good to know that what Rajan says, that this seems to be something which is which gives confidence.
Sir,
Yes, Ramesh, you want to?
While working in NBPGR, we have the experience that Accuracy has the very good biosecurity system, because they have Dr. Rajan is the head of that unit. Even after the clearance, they are growing in the post intake quarantine and inspection and all this. But the other CG center position is very, very, very bad in respect to even the CMET or ECARDA and all these things. And whatever Dr. Celia has pointed out, One Health Center, I have gone through this concept, and from the ICR point of view, Government of India point of view, we have given the comments and we agreed to be a partner of that. We raise a lot of queries in this. Unfortunately, when the first launching was there, I was not there. I was in leave when the meeting was there. And Accuracy is not a partner as one CG center nowadays. But this program has to be more focused. We have given a lot of points has to be taken before implementing the program in India, and Dr. Prasanna has agreed upon that. This has to be discussed, deliberated, and then concrete program will be formulated. And let us hope that this can be. Otherwise, personally, I was in opinion first they have to revise the program, then the ICR has to give the consent. But later on, we have discussed at the ICR level, consent of the Government of India has been given, in understanding that they will discuss it and formulate as per the our own mandate to avoid the duplication, repetition of the work is going on in different institutions, and that will be most suited for our country in respect of the biosecurity, biosafety, as well as the management of the diseases of those who are the pandemic in nature. Thank you, sir, for interruption, Dr. Celia. Sorry for but this information
Very
I
nice.
want.
Yeah, it is required. And Dr. Ramesh?
That's a wonderful intervention from Dr. Dubey, because NBPGR has been at the helm of affairs, and we have been handling all the material of Accuracy at Hyderabad, and we for decades we are known to have maintained very high standards of nowadays we are calling it as biosecurity, but protocols associated with the plant quarantine. And I'm very happy Dr. Dubey came in and intervened, and it's very good that I do understand that there is a difficulty with other international CG institutions. Thank you, Dr. Celia. Actually, I want to tell you, Dr. Varaprasad is on drive, and he's glued on to the YouTube, and he says that he's not able to interact. Let me see if he comes back to me with any query. I will come back to you again. Thank you.
In the meantime, Dr. Ramesh, you have raised hand.
Yeah. So thank you for the wonderful lecture, sir. It was very informative, and we are curious to know what's the reason for the awareness in Australia, because government, industry, and even community is well aware about the biosecurity provisions, and they are very keen on protecting the security. Just we would like to know, is there any starting point like COVID in agriculture, which initiated this kind of awareness in Australia, or is it government initiative only? Just we would like to know, sir, because it is a model biosecurity system in the world to be followed. So just kindly answer this question, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you, Sharma. It's a very good question, and it gets asked in many countries I go to, that they would like to have a similar level of engagement of community businesses in biosecurity. I think it is primarily by the government clearly explaining the consequences of not having biosecurity and the merits of biosecurity system in layman's term. And the very idea, giving that power and authority to everyone, you report it and we can take action. And that happens. And there are so many independent reviews that any complacency on the part of any action policymaker, doer, doesn't matter, minister, bureaucrat, scientist, you cannot afford to not work as you have agreed to. So that is somewhere that is driving the country. And though people, community members, they believe that those who have taken up this responsibility, they deserve respect, but at the same time, they're accountable. So there is no reason to be complacent. And for example, if a director of biosecurity comes to his notice or her notice that there is a suspect detection of a disease, it may be Friday, 4:30 p.m. You have no option. You are not going home. You will have to implement immediate action, whether there are people who have already gone. It doesn't matter. So the accountability and the need, and that's expected. And it's possible that most of the time that you're not recognized for that because taken is a part of your job. So I think it's a culture development which happens gradually and slowly, but you're right that a start has to be made. And in my opinion, the COVID incident provides that opportunity to instill in the public the importance of having a biosecurity awareness and the merits of having biosecurity. Look, we are lucky, and I would say lucky, because in Western Australia, we do not have any restrictions whatsoever for most of the last 2 years. And we have limited cases that are covered under the hotels or other places. And one is that you're outrightly lucky, but I think a strong biosecurity decision-making system also contributes to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is actually, during your presentation, you said that it is everybody's business. Biosecurity response is everybody's business. That's a wonderful point you made during your presentation. That culture has to happen in our country too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you, sir. In fact, during my visit to your lab, in one of the field visits, I have seen farm biosecurity in one of the fields, and then they were talking about weeds and used vehicles and reporting it to the county, I think. So that awareness is, we can actually see when we go to Australia. And nobody has raised their hands. Before I hand over the mic, I would like to, it is a honor to listen to you, sir. It is always a learning experience for me personally. And to just give you the information as far as the curriculum is concerned, NBPGR, of course, we are part of IRI. We have plant biosecurity course. We teach to MSc and PhD students, and plant quarantine course to MSc and PhD students, and also IRI different divisions. Even hematology division has plant quarantine course. And some of the universities like Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, they have curriculum now, because most of the people ask us for teaching manuals and practical manuals. So it's an initiative, but not as such dissertation like PhD in biosecurity we don't have, but courses are offered.
Very good.
Yeah, and also what India, disembarkation card, earlier we used to fill up the disembarkation card. At least we used to declare whether we are carrying something or not, but now that is also taken away. And we have brought to the notice of the government, and hopefully that will be introduced again. Like in Australia, USA and all, we have to declare whatever we are carrying. So the reasons not known to me, it has been stopped. And also there is a need for bioscanners at the airports in India. And as you rightly said, biosecurity is everybody's business. And that is what in the course also we tell the students, not only the government, but also the researchers and also the common public. We all have the responsibility to protect our agriculture. Thank you so much, sir. And
Thank you
now
very
I
much.
have the mic to Bhaskar Bajaru.
Yes, madam. Thank you, madam. So now I'm going to propose this vote of thanks. So I must say,
You are not audible.
and next I'm going I must thank to Dr. Vachimala Celia Chalam madam for initiation of organizing this lecture by Shashi Bhooshan Sharma sir. So thank you, madam. So I would like to thank Dr. S.C. Dubey sir, ADG Plant Protection and Biosecurity, and Dr. K.S. Varaprasad sir, former president of this society, and Dr. Chattopadhyay sir for valuable discussion and points during this lecture interaction meeting. So I'm thankful to all of you, sir. And our quarantine staff, Dr. Anita Kodaru madam, Dr. Parmeshwari madam, Dr. L. Sarvanan sir, Prasanna Holajjar sir, and Kavita Gupta madam, Jamil Akhtar sir, and all other quarantine staff at headquarters New Delhi, NPPG headquarters New Delhi, and our ECRISAT quarantine staff, Dr. Rajan Sharma sir, Humayun sir, and Dr. K. Ramesh sir, who are all there for any time to do anything about this society and also for this lecture series. Thank you, one and all. And I also thanks to all executive members of this society all over across the India and the participants of this lecture. I am very much thankful to all of you, members of this society. And lastly, I must say big thanks to our today's speaker, Dr. Shashi Bhooshan Sharma sir, for wonderful lecture and very informative lecture about this biosecurity and the recommendations to our India. So we are very much thankful to you, sir, for this wonderful lecture. Thank you to Dr. Shashi Bhooshan Sharma sir. And thank you to everyone for patience hearing of this lecture. Thank you, one and all.
This young man is is behind all the arrangements. There's nobody is logged onto this lecture today, and I must tell you that he has been really behind the society for all activity, not just for arranging this this talk. And I must specially thank, as President of Plant Protection Association of India, Dr. S.B. Sharma, of course, and Dr. Celia. This happened because of Celia did all this because she has been in touch with him. I lost contact with Dr. Sharma. I tried to, talk to Dr. Renu, but Renu only responded back to me. I didn't have Dr. Sharma's contact. So Renu said that Dr. Sharma is ready to do it. And after that, everything happened. And I must really thank Dr. Sharma and Dr. Celia and all the guests of, today's who have taken the benefit of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
Bhavan.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for a wonderful lecture.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
so now the lecture is available on YouTube also, sir. Whenever
Okay.
you want. Yes, sir. We can hear the lecture whenever we want.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
A small request, if possible, kindly share that link of the YouTube
Sure, sir. Sure.
on the
It is-
same mails that you have sent. Please.
Sure, sir.
Thank
Sure,
you.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
हो
Thank you.
जाएगा डॉक्टर साहब डॉक्टर चट्टोपाध्याय हो जाएगा थैंक यू वेरी मच थैंक यू फॉर बीइंग देयर डॉक्टर साहब थैंक यू we shall end the talk now I think thank you
Now,
Dr.
yeah.
Rajan thank you
Thank you. Thank you very much.
take care bye
Everyone. Bye.
yeah